I still remember the exact moment my life changed forever. It was a Tuesday in late August, one of those unbearably hot days where the air feels thick enough to swim through. I was standing in the doorway of my new apartment, watching a guy with the most perfectly tousled brown hair struggle with a mattress that was clearly too heavy for one person to carry alone. "Need some help with that?" I called out, already moving toward him. He looked up, and I swear the world tilted on its axis. His eyes were this impossible shade of green, like sea glass catching the light, and when he smiled, I felt something in my chest crack open just a little. "That would be amazing, man. I'm Jake, by the way. Jake Morrison. I'm guessing you're my new roommate." "That's me, Adrian Chen." I grabbed one end of the mattress, trying not to stare at the way his t-shirt clung to his shoulders. "Welcome to apartment 4B. That's how it started. So ordinary, so innocent. Just two guys in their mid-20s, strangers thrown together by a Craigslist ad and the astronomical cost of rent in the city. I had no idea that 6 months later I'd be lying awake at night, heart racing, trying to process what had just happened between us. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you the whole story, because the truth is messy and complicated and nothing like what I expected. This isn't one of those simple tales where everything works out perfectly or where the moral is clear from the beginning. This is real life with all its awkward moments, confusion, and those terrifying instances when you have to choose between protecting yourself and taking a leap into the unknown. The apartment was small but decent. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that could barely fit 2 people at once, and a living room with windows that faced the building next door. Not exactly a palace, but in our neighborhood it was a steal. I'd been living there for 3 years, ever since I graduated from college, and I'd gone through 2 roommates already. The first had moved in with his girlfriend after 6 months. The second had gotten a job in Seattle and disappeared with barely 2 weeks' notice. So when I posted the ad looking for a third roommate, I was honestly just hoping for someone who would pay their share of the rent on time and not leave dirty dishes in the sink for days. I wasn't looking for friendship. I definitely wasn't looking for, well, for what ended up happening. Jake moved in on a Saturday, and by Sunday evening he completely transformed the energy of the apartment. Where I tended to keep things minimal and organized, Jake brought life and chaos in equal measure. His room became an explosion of band posters, vintage vinyl records, and stacks of dog-eared books on philosophy and psychology. He had this way of sprawling into space, of making himself comfortable wherever he was, that I both envied and found strangely endearing. "You don't mind music, do you?" he asked that first night, already hooking up speakers in the living room. "Depends on the music," I said cautiously. He grinned. "Fair enough. How about we establish some ground rules? You tell me what bugs you, I tell you what bugs me, and we try not to drive each other crazy." I like that. Direct communication, no games. Sounds good, I'll start. I need the bathroom for about 45 minutes every morning between 6:30 and 7:15. It's my routine and I get really cranky if I can't stick to it. Noted. I'm usually not even conscious before 8, so we're good there. He paused, thinking. Okay, my thing is that I'm a night owl. I'll try to keep it down, but sometimes I get into a project or a good book and I lose track of time. If I'm being too loud, just text me or bang on the wall or something. Deal. We shook on it, and I remember thinking that this might actually work out okay. Jake seemed easygoing, respectful, the kind of guy who would become a solid, reliable roommate and maybe a casual friend. I had no idea how wrong I was about the casual part. The first few weeks were an adjustment period, that awkward dance of learning someone else's habits and quirks. Jake, I discovered, was chronically incapable of closing cabinet doors. He'd make himself a sandwich and leave every single cabinet hanging open like accusatory mouths. He also had a habit of conducting full phone conversations while walking around the apartment in nothing but boxer briefs, completely unself-conscious about his body in a way that I found both admirable and deeply distracting. Because here's the thing I haven't mentioned yet: I'm gay. Out proud, comfortable with myself. I'd come out to my family when I was 19, gone through the whole journey of self-acceptance, and by the time I was living in the city I was firmly settled into my identity. I dated occasionally, had a small but solid group of queer friends, and generally didn't make a big deal about my sexuality. It was just a fact about me, like being left-handed or having a mild allergy to cilantro. I mentioned it casually to Jake about a week after he moved in. We were sitting on the couch, eating Thai food and watching some nature documentary about octopuses when he started telling me about his ex-girlfriend. "Yeah, Rachel and I dated for like 3 years," he said, spearing a piece of chicken with his fork. Met in college, thought we'd get married, the whole thing. Then she got into med school across the country and we tried the long distance thing for about 6 months before we both admitted it wasn't working. That's rough, I said. Long distance is hard. The worst, are you seeing anyone? Nah, not right now. My last boyfriend and I broke up about 4 months ago. We wanted different things. I said it casually, watching his reaction out of the corner of my eye. Some straight guys got weird when they found out they were living with a gay man, like they suddenly worried I was going to hit on them or make things uncomfortable. But Jake just nodded, completely unfazed. That sucks, man. What kind of different things? And just like that, we were having a normal conversation about relationships and breakups, and my sexuality was just another fact on the table. Jake asked questions the way straight friends do when they're genuinely curious but trying not to be offensive. How did I know I was gay? When did I come out? Was my family cool with it? I appreciated his interest, even when his questions were a little clumsy. So, like, when you're attracted to a guy, he said one night, is it the same kind of thing as when I'm attracted to a woman? Like, do you look at guys the way I look at hot girls? I laughed. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, everyone's attraction is different, but fundamentally, if you see a woman and think she's beautiful and you feel that pull toward her, that's basically what I feel when I see a guy I'm attracted to. Huh, he looked thoughtful. That's actually really cool. I've never thought about it that clearly before. These conversations became a regular thing. Jake was one of those rare straight guys who was genuinely comfortable with queerness, not in a performative I'm such a good ally way, but in a deep, genuine sense. He asked questions when he was curious, never made weird jokes, and treated my dating life with the same interest and respect he'd show anyone else's. We fell into a rhythm. Mornings I'd claim the bathroom for my routine while Jake slept in. Evenings we'd often end up in the living room together, him sprawled on one end of the couch with a book, me on the other end with my laptop, working on freelance graphic design projects. We'd cook dinner together sometimes, clumsy collaborative efforts that usually resulted in too much food and dishes everywhere. Weekends, we'd occasionally grab beers at the bar down the street, or I'd go out with my friends while Jake met up with his. It was comfortable, easy, the kind of roommate situation people dream about. And then, about 2 months after Jake moved in, I started noticing things. It started small, little moments that probably didn't mean anything but that my traitorous brain latched onto anyway. Like the way Jake would touch my shoulder when he passed behind me in the kitchen, a casual hand that lingered just a second longer than necessary. Or how he'd always choose to sit next to me on the couch instead of in the armchair, even when there was plenty of space. Or the fact that he started asking my opinion on what he should wear when he went out, standing in my doorway in different shirt combinations like we were characters in a rom-com. This one or this one, he'd ask, holding up two shirts that looked basically identical to me. The blue one brings out your eyes, I'd say, trying to sound casual, trying not to think about how I'd apparently memorized the exact shade of his eyes. Yeah, okay, blue it is. Yeah. I told myself I was imagining things. Jake was straight. He'd dated women, he talked about women. The fact that he was comfortable around me, that we were becoming genuinely close friends, didn't mean anything beyond friendship. But then there was the touching. I don't mean anything inappropriate, just more physical contact than I was used to with straight guy friends. Jake was a tactile person, I learned. He'd clap me on the back, ruffle my hair, lean against me when we were sitting together watching TV. Once, when we were both a little drunk after a night out, he'd thrown his arm around my shoulders as we walked home, and I'd been hyper-aware of every point where our bodies touched, the weight of his arm, the warmth of his side pressed against mine. You're a good friend, Adrian, he'd said that night, words slightly slurred. I'm really glad I moved in here. Yeah, me too. And that was the truth. Even as I was starting to develop feelings that went way beyond friendship, I genuinely valued having Jake in my life. He made me laugh. He listened when I talked about work stress or family drama. He introduced me to new music and recommended books he thought I'd like. We developed the kind of shorthand that comes from living in close quarters with someone, where we could communicate with just a look or a gesture. I tried to be smart about my growing crush. I went on dates with other guys, swiped through apps, made an effort to redirect my attention anywhere else. But none of those dates went anywhere, and I'd always end up back at the apartment, comparing everyone else to Jake and finding them wanting. It was around month 3 that I started noticing Jake's sleeping habits. Our rooms shared a wall, and the walls in our building were thin enough that I could hear when Jake was moving around, when his alarm went off, when he was on the phone. Usually he slept quietly, but I started waking up in the middle of the night to sounds from his room. Not loud sounds, just movement, the creak of his bed, a soft groan, the rustle of sheets. I tried not to think about what he might be doing. Really, I did. But I was a 26-year-old gay man with a massive crush on my straight roommate, and my imagination was more than happy to fill in the details. I'd lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to those sounds and hating myself for listening, for the way my body responded, for the fantasies that crept into my mind unbidden. This is wrong, I'd think. He's your friend, he's straight, get it together. But the sounds continued, and so did my increasingly complicated feelings. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday in late November. I'd been out with friends, a dinner that had turned into drinks that had turned into dancing at a gay club downtown. I'd had fun, even flirted with a cute guy for a while, but I'd left alone, taking an Uber home around 2 in the morning. The apartment was dark when I let myself in, which wasn't unusual. Jake had mentioned something about drinks with coworkers, but he'd probably been home for hours by now. I kicked off my shoes, trying to be quiet, and padded toward my room. That's when I noticed Jake's door was open. This was unusual. Jake always slept with his door closed. Always. I paused, suddenly concerned. Was he okay? Had something happened? I moved closer, intending to just peek in and make sure he was all right, and that's when I saw him. Jake was sprawled on his bed, lying on his back on top of the covers, illuminated by the streetlight coming through his window, and he was completely naked. I should have looked away immediately, I know that, but I froze, my brain short-circuiting, and for one eternal moment I just stared. He was beautiful, that was my first coherent thought. His body was lean and toned, with the kind of muscles that come from actually using your body rather than spending hours at the gym. His skin looked soft in the dim light, and he was lying in this completely unself-conscious sprawl, one arm thrown above his head, the other resting on his stomach. And yes, everything was out, completely visible. And I noticed because I'm human and he was attractive and I'd been harboring feelings for him for months, but that's not what made me stand there, frozen and staring. It was the vulnerability of it, the absolute trust it represented to sleep like that with your door open in an apartment you shared with someone else. The beautiful, unconscious peace on his face. I don't know how long I stood there, probably only a few seconds, though it felt like hours. Then reality crashed back in and I was horrified with myself. This was a massive violation of privacy. Jake was asleep, vulnerable, and here I was, essentially spying on him in his most private moment. I backed away quickly, careful not to make any noise, and practically fled to my room. I closed my door and leaned against it, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. What the hell was wrong with me? Jake trusted me, we were friends, and I just stood there staring at him while he slept, naked and completely unaware. The guilt was crushing. I got ready for bed mechanically, my mind racing. Should I tell him? Should I apologize? Or should I just never mention it and hope he never found out? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him again. That image burned into my memory, and mixed with the guilt and shame was something else, something I didn't want to acknowledge: desire, want, a longing so intense it physically hurt. The next morning, I woke up early despite my lack of sleep. I needed to figure out how to face Jake, how to act normal, how to pretend nothing had happened. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard his door open. My whole body tensed. "Morning," Jake said, his voice rough with sleep. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking completely normal, completely like himself. "Morning," I managed, not quite meeting his eyes. He came into the kitchen, moving past me to grab a mug from the cabinet. He was close enough that I could smell his shampoo, and I had to resist the urge to step away. "How was your night?" he asked casually, pouring himself coffee. "It was good, fun, yours?" "Pretty chill, went out with some people from work, came home, crashed pretty hard." He took a sip of his coffee and made a satisfied sound. "I think I forgot to close my door when I went to bed. Did you notice when you got home?" My heart stopped. He knew, he had to know. This was his way of bringing it up, of confronting me. Yeah, I noticed," I said carefully. "Thought so, sorry about that, I was pretty tired." He said it so casually, like it was no big deal at all. I stared at him, trying to read his expression, but he just looked like regular Jake, drinking his coffee, completely at ease. "It's fine," I said finally, "no big deal." "Cool," he smiled at me, that easy smile that had gotten under my skin from day one. "Want to order pizza later and watch a movie or something?" "Yeah, sure, sounds good." And just like that, the moment passed. Jake finished his coffee, said something about going for a run, and disappeared back into his room. I stood there in the kitchen, completely confused. Had he really not cared, or was he just being polite about the fact that I'd seen him naked? I didn't know, and I was too much of a coward to ask. After that night, I thought things would be weird between us. I thought the dynamic would shift, that there would be this uncomfortable awareness hanging in the air. But nothing changed. Jake was exactly the same, friendly, casual, comfortable in our shared space. If anything, he seemed even more relaxed around the apartment, more willing to wander around in minimal clothing, more physically affectionate in that casual, straight guy way. And his door kept being open at night. At first, I thought it was an accident, a one-time thing. But then it happened again. And again. I'd come home late from work or from being out with friends, and his door would be open and he'd be there, sleeping, often with minimal clothing or none at all. I developed a routine of averting my eyes and going straight to my room. I refused to look, refused to violate his privacy again, but the knowledge that he was there, that I could look if I wanted to, haunted me. Was he doing it on purpose? The thought crept into my mind unbidden and refused to leave. But that was insane, right? Why would Jake deliberately sleep with his door open, knowing I might see him? He was straight. He'd told me about his ex-girlfriend, about the women he was interested in. This had to be accidental, just a quirk of his sleeping habits. But then there was the night I came home and found him on the couch. It was late December, about a month after the first incident. I'd been at a friend's birthday party and had texted Jake that I'd be home late. When I walked in around 1 in the morning, I expected the apartment to be dark and quiet. Instead, the TV was on, volume low, casting flickering light across the living room. And there was Jake, asleep on the couch, wearing nothing but boxer briefs. He was on his back, one leg hanging off the couch, his face turned toward the cushions. The TV remote was still in his hand. He must have fallen asleep watching something. I stood there, frozen in the doorway, having a full-on internal crisis. This was different from seeing him in his room. This was a shared space. If I just left him there, he'd probably wake up with a sore neck. The right thing to do, the friendly thing, would be to wake him up and tell him to go to bed. But I didn't want to startle him, and I definitely didn't want him to wake up and realize I'd been standing there staring at him. "Jake," I said softly from a safe distance. "Hey, Jake." He stirred but didn't wake up. I tried again, a little louder. "Jake, you fell asleep on the couch." This time his eyes fluttered open. He looked confused for a moment, disoriented, then focused on me. "Adrian, what time is it?" "Around 1, you should probably go to bed." He groaned and sat up slowly, rubbing his face. "Yeah, okay, I was just watching." He looked at the TV where some action movie was playing. "I don't even remember what I was watching." He stood up, stretching, completely unself-conscious about the fact that he was standing in front of me in nothing but underwear. I kept my eyes firmly on his face. "You have fun tonight?" he asked, still sounding half asleep. "Yeah, it was good. Go to bed, Jake." He smiled, sleepy and soft. "Yeah, okay, night, Adrian." "Night." I watched him shuffle off to his room, then turned off the TV and stood there in the dark living room, trying to calm my racing heart. This is torture, I thought, absolute torture. I was falling for my straight roommate, the oldest cliché in the gay handbook, and I had no idea how to stop. Every interaction felt loaded with meaning, every casual touch felt like it meant something, and I was constantly second-guessing myself, wondering if I was seeing things that weren't there or missing things that were. Things came to a head a few weeks later, in early January. It was one of those freezing winter nights where the cold seeps into your bones and makes you want to hibernate. I'd spent the day working from home, and by evening I was restless and cabin-fevered. Jake had been out all day at his job at the marketing firm, and I found myself watching the clock, waiting for him to get home. When I heard his key in the lock, I felt this embarrassing surge of relief and happiness. "Hey," he called out, stomping snow off his boots, "it's brutal out there." "Want some hot chocolate?" I offered, already moving toward the kitchen. I was just about to make some. "Yes, please, you're a lifesaver." We ended up on the couch together, mugs of hot chocolate warming our hands, a blanket thrown over both of us. The heating in our building was always temperamental, and tonight it seemed to be losing the battle against the cold. I've been thinking, Jake said after a few minutes of comfortable silence. About what? About how I don't really have close guy friends anymore. Like, I have work friends and college buddies I see occasionally, but not anyone I really talk to, not the way we talk. I looked at him, surprised by the sudden seriousness in his tone. Yeah. Yeah, and I was thinking about why that is. I think a lot of straight guys are just really bad at intimacy with each other. We're taught that being vulnerable or emotional or close with another guy is somehow weak or gay, and so we keep each other at arm's length. That's pretty insightful, I said carefully, not sure where this was going. Living with you has made me realize how much I was missing out on. Like, we can just talk about stuff, real stuff, and it's not weird or awkward, it's just nice. My heart was doing complicated things in my chest. I'm glad, I said. You're a good friend, Jake. He turned to look at me, and there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Can I ask you something, and will you be honest with me? Warning bells went off in my head. Sure. Do I make you uncomfortable? Of all the questions I'd been expecting, that wasn't one of them. What? No, why would you think that? He hesitated, then said, I know I'm kind of casual about boundaries sometimes. Like, I walk around half-dressed, I probably overshare about my life, I'm always touching you. And I realize that maybe that's weird for you given that you're gay and I'm a guy. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable in your own home. I was stunned into silence. This was possibly the most thoughtful thing anyone had ever said to me. Jake, I said slowly, I really appreciate you asking, but no, you don't make me uncomfortable. Well, not in the way you're worried about, you're just you, and I like having you as a roommate and a friend. Not uncomfortable in the way I'm worried about, he repeated, latching onto the qualification. What other way? Damn it, I'd walked right into that one. I just mean, I struggled for words. Sometimes I worry that I'm going to do something or say something that makes you uncomfortable, like I'm aware that we're different in some fundamental ways and I don't want to overstep. Adrian, he shifted to face me more fully, his knee bumping against mine under the blanket. You could never make me uncomfortable. You're one of the most considerate people I've ever met. Sometimes I wish you'd be less worried about overstepping and just be yourself more. I am myself. Are you, though, or are you the careful version of yourself, the one who's always making sure everyone else is comfortable? The observation hit too close to home, and I felt something defensive rise in my chest. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't want you to say anything specific. I just want you to know that you don't have to be careful with me. I'm not going to freak out if you mention a guy you think is hot or if you want to talk about a date or whatever. I want to be the kind of friend you can be completely real with. The sincerity in his voice was almost painful. Okay, I said quietly, thank you. We sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling around us. Can I ask you something now? I said. Of course. Why do you sleep with your door open? He looked surprised, then a little embarrassed. You noticed that? Kind of hard not to. He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. Honestly, I don't know, I started doing it without really thinking about it, I guess. I don't know, I feel safe here, with you, and I've always been someone who runs hot when I sleep, and sometimes it's just more comfortable with the door open and the air circulating. It was such a reasonable, innocent explanation that I felt stupid for all the overthinking I'd been doing. Plus, he added, and there was something playful in his tone now, I figured if it bothered you, you'd say something. It doesn't bother me, I said too quickly. He raised an eyebrow. No. No, you should sleep however you're comfortable. Good, he settled back against the couch, pulling the blanket higher, because I'm definitely not a pajamas guy. I made a non-committal sound, very aware of the warmth of his leg pressed against mine under the blanket, of the way the conversation had shifted something between us without me being able to quite name what. We finished our hot chocolate in comfortable silence, and eventually Jake announced he was exhausted and headed to bed. I stayed on the couch for a while longer, staring at the TV without really seeing it, trying to process everything. Jake wanted me to be more myself around him, he felt safe with me, he valued our friendship. But he was still straight, and I was still falling for him. Nothing had changed really, and yet everything felt different. January turned into February and the winter seemed endless. The city was buried under snow and everything felt gray and cold and closed in. Work was slow, which meant I spent more time at home, which meant more time with Jake. We developed new routines. Cooking dinner together became a regular thing, both of us experimenting with recipes we found online, often with chaotic results. We'd have movie marathons on weekends, working our way through various directors' filmographies. Jake introduced me to his favorite bands, and I showed him the art films I loved that he'd never heard of. We were becoming genuinely close in a way I hadn't been with anyone in a long time. Jake was the person I wanted to tell when something funny happened at work. He was who I wanted to decompress with after a stressful day, and from what I could tell, the feeling was mutual. But the tension I felt, the constant low-level awareness of my attraction to him, never quite went away. It was like background noise I'd learned to tune out most of the time, but that would suddenly spike into the foreground at unexpected moments. Like the time he asked me to cut his hair. "Are you sure?" I'd asked, skeptical. "I'm not a professional." "It's just a trim and I trust you." He handed me the scissors and sat down on a chair in the kitchen. Plus, haircuts are expensive. So I found myself standing behind him, running my fingers through his hair, trying to focus on cutting straight lines and not on the intimacy of the act, on the way he tilted his head trustingly wherever I guided it, on the soft texture of his hair between my fingers. "You're good at this," he said, eyes closed, voice relaxed. "Don't speak too soon, I might be making you look ridiculous." But I wasn't. The haircut actually turned out well, and when I was done, Jake looked at himself in the mirror and grinned. "See, I knew you'd be great at it." He reached up and squeezed my hand where it rested on his shoulder. "Thanks, Adrian." The casual touch, the easy gratitude, the way he looked at me in the mirror with such warmth, it all added up to something that made my chest ache. Or like the night in late February when we both ended up drunk at the apartment after a party thrown by one of Jake's coworkers. We'd gone together, which wasn't unusual. We'd started being each other's automatic plus ones for things, and I'd met several of Jake's work friends just as he'd met several of mine. The party had been fun, loud, full of people in their 20s letting loose after a long work week. We'd taken an Uber home together, both of us tipsy and laughing about something stupid one of the guys at the party had said. When we got to the apartment, Jake had immediately flopped onto the couch with a groan. "I'm too old for this," he declared dramatically. "I'm ancient, decrepit, falling apart." "You're 27, I pointed out, sitting down next to him. "Exactly, ancient." He turned his head to look at me and his face was very close to mine. "Do you ever feel like you're not where you thought you'd be at this age?" "All the time," I admitted. The alcohol was making me more honest than I usually allowed myself to be. I thought I'd have my career figured out by now, maybe be in a serious relationship, have more of a sense of direction. "Yeah, same. I thought I'd be married by now, have a clear path forward. Instead I'm just here, which isn't bad," he added quickly. "I like here, I like this apartment and my job and," he paused, "I like living with you." "I like living with you too," I said softly. We were still looking at each other and there was something in the air between us, something electric and uncertain. Jake's eyes dropped to my mouth for just a second, so quick I might have imagined it, then back up to my eyes. "Adrian," he said, and his voice was different, lower, almost hesitant. My heart was pounding. "Yeah." For a moment I really thought he was going to kiss me. He leaned forward slightly and I found myself frozen, not breathing, caught between hope and terror. Then he blinked and the moment broke. He sat back, running a hand through his hair. "I should go to bed," he said. "I'm way too drunk." "Yeah," I managed. "Good idea." He stood up, swaying slightly, and I stood too, instinctively reaching out to steady him. He caught my arm, using me for balance, and laughed. "Thanks, you're always taking care of me." "Someone has to." He looked at me for another long moment and I could see him wrestling with something, some thought or feeling he couldn't quite articulate. Then he shook his head slightly as if clearing it. "Good night, Adrian." "Good night." I watched him make his way to his room, then stood there in the living room for a long time, my heart still racing, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. Had that been a moment? Or had I imagined the whole thing, projected my own feelings onto a situation that was completely innocent? I didn't know, and the not knowing was killing me. March arrived, bringing the first hints of spring. The snow began to melt and people emerged from their winter hibernation, hopeful and restless. I decided I needed to get over Jake. It was an active decision, a commitment I made to myself one morning while staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. This crush, this longing was going nowhere. Jake was straight. He'd never given me any real indication that he saw me as anything other than a friend. The almost moment after the party had been just that, almost, not real, not enough to build anything on. So I started going out more. I downloaded the dating apps again with a renewed sense of purpose. I said yes to setups my friends suggested. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects that kept me busy and distracted. And for a while, it seemed to be working. I went on a few dates with a guy named Marcus, a teacher who was funny and kind and genuinely interested in me. We had nice conversations and the physical chemistry was decent, even if it didn't make my heart race the way Jake did. Jake noticed the change in my routine. "You've been going out a lot," he commented one evening when I was getting ready for another date with Marcus. "Yeah, I guess so," I focused on adjusting my collar in the mirror. "That's good, you should be out having fun." His tone was carefully neutral, hard to read. "What about you, are you seeing anyone?" I asked, realizing I hadn't heard him mention dating anyone in a while. "Not really, I went on a few dates after Rachel but nothing stuck. I don't know, I just haven't felt motivated to put myself out there lately." "You should, you're a catch." I said it lightly but I meant it. He laughed. Maybe I'm just bad at the whole dating thing." "You're not, you're just picky, which is good." "Maybe." He was quiet for a moment then said, "This Marcus guy, do you really like him?" The question caught me off guard. Yeah, he's great, we're taking it slow but it's good." "Good," Jake said, but something in his voice sounded off. "That's good, you deserve to be happy." "Thanks." I grabbed my jacket, suddenly eager to leave to escape the weird tension that had filled the room. "I'll probably be back late, don't wait up." "Have fun," he called after me as I headed out the door. The date with Marcus was nice. We went to a new Italian restaurant, shared a bottle of wine, talked about our weeks. He told a funny story about one of his students and I laughed in all the right places. When he walked me to the subway afterward, he kissed me goodnight, a soft, sweet kiss that should have made me feel something more than I did. "I'd really like to see you again," Marcus said, his hand still on my waist. "Me too," I said, and I meant it. I wanted to want this. Marcus was exactly the kind of guy I should be dating, stable, kind, emotionally available. But as I rode the subway home, all I could think about was Jake's expression when I'd left, the odd note in his voice when he'd asked about Marcus. When I got back to the apartment, it was dark except for the light coming from under Jake's door. I could hear music playing softly, one of those melancholy indie songs he listened to when he was in a mood. I stood outside his door for a moment, debating, then I knocked gently. "Yes." I opened the door. Jake was lying on his bed, fully clothed for once, staring at the ceiling with his hands behind his head. "Hey," I said, "you okay?" "Yeah, fine, how was your date?" "It was good." I leaned against the doorframe, studying him. "Are you sure you're okay? You seem weird." He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he sat up, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think it's possible to not know something about yourself, like to think you're one way and then realize you might be wrong?" My heart started beating faster. "What do you mean?" He ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with something. "I don't know, forget it, it's stupid." "Jake," I came into the room sitting on the edge of his bed. "Talk to me, what's going on?" He looked at me, and there was something raw and vulnerable in his eyes that I'd never seen before. "I think I've been lying to myself," he said quietly, "or maybe not lying exactly, just not seeing something that was right in front of me." "Okay," I said carefully, my pulse racing. "What haven't you been seeing?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again, shaking his head. "I can't." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up." "Jake." "Please, Adrian, can we pretend I didn't say anything? I need to figure some stuff out first." I wanted to push, to demand answers, but the look on his face stopped me. He looked scared and confused, and pushing him would only make it worse. "Okay," I said softly, "but whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here, you know that, right?" "Yeah, I know," he gave me a weak smile. "You're a good friend." Friend, the word felt like a knife, even though it was true, even though it was all we'd ever been. I said goodnight and went to my room, but I didn't sleep. I lay awake for hours, running through the conversation over and over, trying to decode what Jake had meant, what he'd almost said. The next few weeks were strange. Jake seemed to be avoiding me, or at least avoiding being alone with me. He stayed late at work, made plans with other friends, spent more time in his room with the door closed. The easy intimacy we'd built was suddenly full of awkward silences and careful distance. I kept seeing Marcus, partly because I genuinely liked him and partly because I needed the distraction. But it was getting harder to pretend my heart was in it when my mind was always back at the apartment, wondering what was going on with Jake. Marcus and I had been dating for about a month when he invited me back to his place for the first time. It was a clear invitation for more than just coffee, and I accepted, determined to move forward with this relationship, to stop fixating on something that was never going to happen. His apartment was cozy and warm, full of books and plants. We sat on his couch with glasses of wine, talking and laughing, and when he leaned in to kiss me, I kissed him back. It was good, nice. His hands were gentle as they moved to my waist, pulling me closer. But when I closed my eyes, I saw green eyes instead of brown, imagined different hands touching me, heard a different voice saying my name. I pulled back abruptly. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice thick. "I can't, I'm sorry, Marcus, this isn't fair to you." He looked confused, then understanding dawned. "There's someone else." Not exactly, it's complicated." "It always is." He wasn't angry, just resigned and a little sad. "Let me guess, he doesn't know how you feel." "He's straight," I said, the words bitter on my tongue. "And my roommate, so yeah, it's a whole thing." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "For what it's worth, I don't think he's as straight as you think he is." I looked at him sharply. "What?" "I met him once, remember, when he dropped off your keys that time you forgot them, the way he looked at you when you weren't paying attention." Marcus shook his head. "I'm not saying I know for sure, but I've been in the queer community long enough to recognize that look." "You're wrong," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Maybe." He stood up, grabbing our wine glasses. "But Adrian, you can't keep holding yourself back because you're afraid of what might happen. At some point you have to either tell him how you feel or let it go. This middle ground is just hurting you." I left Marcus's apartment feeling worse than when I'd arrived. He was right, and I knew it. I couldn't keep living like this, caught between hope and denial, unable to move forward because I was stuck on someone who couldn't want me back. When I got home, the apartment was dark. It was late, after midnight, and I assumed Jake was asleep. I went to the kitchen to get some water, and that's when I heard it. A sound from Jake's room, not the usual sounds of sleep, but something different. A muffled voice, words I couldn't quite make out, and then, "My name." I froze, glass halfway to my lips, wondering if I'd imagined it. But then I heard it again, breathy and low, "Adrian." My heart stopped, then started again, pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. Jake was in his room, clearly awake, and he just said my name in a voice that was unmistakably intimate, sexual. I should have left, should have gone to my room, put in headphones, pretended I'd never heard. But I couldn't move. I stood there in the dark kitchen, listening to the sounds coming from his room, and something in me broke open. All this time I'd been so sure Jake was straight, so convinced that my feelings were one-sided, that I was alone in this wanting, but he just said my name while doing that, while touching himself. What did that mean? The sounds from his room grew quieter, then stopped altogether. I heard the rustle of sheets, the creak of his bed, and then silence. I stood there for another minute, still frozen, my mind racing. Then I made a decision. I walked to his room. His door was open, of course it was open, and I could see him in the dim light from the window. He was lying on his back, one arm thrown over his eyes, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths. He wasn't asleep. "Jake," I said quietly. He jerked upright, eyes wide with surprise and something that looked like panic. "Adrian, I thought you weren't home yet." "I just got back." I stepped into the doorway, my heart pounding. "I heard you." The panic in his eyes intensified. "I don't know what you said my name." He stared at me, frozen, and I watched about a dozen emotions cross his face in rapid succession: shock, shame, fear, and something else. something that looked almost like relief. He swallowed hard. Fuck, Adrian, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for you to hear that, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Any of what? I asked, taking another step into the room. This, he gestured helplessly between us. Whatever this is, I've been trying to figure it out for months and I still don't have answers, and I know this is the worst possible thing I could do because you're my friend and my roommate and I can't afford to lose you, but I can't stop thinking about you. My breath caught. What are you saying? I don't know. He stood up and I realized he was only wearing boxers, that his skin was flushed, that he looked beautiful and wrecked and real. I don't know what I'm saying because I don't know what I am. I thought I was straight. I've always been straight. But then you moved in and you were just supposed to be my roommate, but you became my best friend, and somewhere along the way that stopped being enough. Jake. I know you're seeing Marcus. I know I have no right to say any of this, but you asked and I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of pretending that I don't look for you when I come home, that I don't think about you constantly, that I don't. He stopped, closing his eyes. That I don't want things I'm not supposed to want. I was shaking, actually physically shaking, like my body couldn't contain everything I was feeling. How long? I asked. How long have you felt this way? I don't know. It wasn't like a switch flipped. It was gradual, this slow realization that what I felt for you wasn't just friendship. Maybe since the beginning, maybe since that first day when you helped me carry my mattress up the stairs and smiled at me like I was already someone who mattered to you. He opened his eyes, looking at me with raw honesty. When did you know that you felt something for me? About 2 months after you moved in, I admitted. Maybe sooner. I tried to ignore it. You were straight and my roommate and I didn't want to mess up what we had. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm sorry I didn't figure this out sooner. I'm sorry I've been such a mess these past few weeks. I've been trying to sort through my own head, trying to understand what I'm feeling and what it means, and… Jake, I closed the distance between us, standing right in front of him now. Stop apologizing. I don't know what I'm doing, he said, and his voice cracked slightly. I've never felt this way about a guy before. I don't know what I am or what this makes me or how to. I kissed him. I'd imagined this moment so many times, but the reality was nothing like my fantasies. He made a soft sound of surprise against my mouth, then his hands came up to my face, cradling it gently as he kissed me back. His lips were soft and uncertain and I could feel him trembling, but he didn't pull away. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. He didn't finish the sentence. Yeah, I agreed. I don't know what I'm doing, he repeated. That's okay, we can figure it out. What about Marcus? I broke things off with him tonight before I came home. It wasn't fair to him when I stopped, then decided to just say it. When I was in love with you. Jake pulled back to look at me, his eyes wide. You love me. Yeah, I said, and it felt like jumping off a cliff. I do, I have for a while. He stared at me for a long moment. And I braced myself for him to panic, to take it back, to say this was all a mistake. Instead, he kissed me again. We didn't sleep that night. We stayed up in Jake's room, alternating between kissing and talking, trying to process everything that had just happened. I can't believe I said your name, Jake said at one point, his face buried in his hands with embarrassment. Of all the mortifying things. I couldn't help laughing. If it makes you feel better, it's actually what gave me the courage to come in here. To catch me in the most vulnerable moment possible. To stop being a coward about how I felt. I reached over and pulled his hands away from his face. Jake, look at me, this is new territory for both of us. You're allowed to be figuring things out. But what if I'm bad at this? What if I'm not? Enough, I don't know how to be with a guy, I don't know what I'm doing. You think I knew what I was doing when I first came out? I said gently. Everyone starts somewhere, and for what it's worth, you're doing fine. He smiled, a little wobbly but genuine. Yeah. Yeah, I kissed him softly, but we should probably talk about what this means, what we're doing, what happens now. Jake nodded, his expression turning serious. I want to be with you, I know that much, but I also know I need time to figure out my own identity. I don't know if I'm gay or bi or just, Adrian, sexual. He laughed nervously at his own joke. I don't want to put a label on it right now, is that okay? Of course it's okay, you don't owe anyone a label, least of all me. I thought for a moment. But I do think we need to figure out the practical stuff. Living together while dating could get complicated. Do you want to move out? The panic in his voice was immediate. No, God no, but we need ground rules, ways to handle if things get difficult, if we fight, if we need space. Living together means we can't just avoid each other if things get hard. You're right, he took a deep breath. Okay, ground rules like what? We spent the next hour hashing it out. If we fought, we'd agree to still be civil in shared spaces. We'd be honest about when we needed alone time. We wouldn't let relationship stuff completely take over the apartment. We'd still maintain our individual lives and friendships. And most importantly, we'd communicate, even when it was hard. This is very mature of us, Jake said at one point. Well, one of us has to be mature, I grinned at him, since you're apparently going through a sexuality crisis at 27. He threw a pillow at me and I caught it, laughing. Then he was tackling me backward onto the bed, both of us wrestling and laughing like idiots until suddenly we weren't laughing anymore. We were just looking at each other, faces inches apart, and the air between us changed. Can I? Jake started, then seemed to lose his nerve. Can you what? Can we? I mean, do you want to? He was blushing furiously and it was adorable. Use your words, Jake. Do you want to actually sleep here tonight, with me just sleeping, he added quickly. I'm not ready for anything more than what we've already done, but I want you close. My heart melted, I'd love to. So we got under the covers together and Jake curled into me, his head on my chest, my arm around his shoulders. It felt surreal and perfect and slightly terrifying all at once. Adrian, he murmured, already half asleep. Yes. Thank you for being patient with me. Always. The next few weeks were simultaneously the best and most challenging of my life. Dating Jake while living with him was intense in ways I hadn't anticipated. There was nowhere to hide, no breaks from each other, no going home to process things alone. Every interaction, every moment was magnified. But it was also beautiful. I got to wake up next to him most mornings, his hair sticking up in all directions, his face soft with sleep. I got to cook dinner with him while he told me about his day, stealing kisses between stirring pasta and chopping vegetables. I got to introduce him to all the little intimacies of a relationship, watching him discover himself in the process. Jake was endearingly nervous about everything at first. Our first real make-out session, he'd pulled back after a few minutes, breathless and wide-eyed. Is it always this intense? He'd asked. When it's with someone you really care about, yeah, usually. Okay, good, I thought maybe I was doing it wrong. You're not doing it wrong, I'd assured him, pulling him back in. He was also hilariously concerned about telling people. Not because he was ashamed, he made that clear, but because he didn't know how to explain something he was still figuring out himself. What do I say when my parents ask about my love life? He asked one evening. Do I tell them I'm dating my roommate? Do I tell them I'm questioning my sexuality? Do I just say nothing? You say whatever you're comfortable with, I told him. There's no timeline on coming out if that's even what you want to call it. Take your time. But despite his nervousness, Jake threw himself into our relationship with the same enthusiasm he brought to everything. He wanted to learn everything, what I liked, what felt good, how to navigate this new territory. He asked questions that were sometimes awkward but always sincere. And slowly, I watched him come into himself. There was the night he held my hand in public for the first time. We were walking home from a movie and he just reached over and laced his fingers through mine. When I looked at him in surprise, he smiled. Too much? He asked. No, perfect. There was the morning he made me breakfast in bed, complete with badly burned toast and overcooked eggs, grinning proudly at his effort. I'm getting better at the boyfriend thing, right? You're doing great, I'd said, kissing him despite his protest that he had morning breath. There was the evening he came home excited about having lunch with a college friend and mentioning, casually, that he was seeing someone. I didn't say it was a guy, he told me, but I also didn't correct her when she assumed it was a girl. Baby steps, right? Baby steps. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There was the fight we had when Jake got jealous of one of my friends, a guy I'd briefly dated years ago and couldn't articulate why he was upset. I just don't like how he looks at you, he'd finally admitted. He doesn't look at me any particular way. We're friends, Jake, just friends. I know, I'm being stupid, I'm sorry. He'd run his hands through his hair in frustration. I've never been the jealous type, but with you, everything feels more intense. That's because this is new, you're still figuring out how to process all these feelings, but you have to trust me, okay? I chose you, I'm choosing you. There was the night I snapped at him for leaving his dishes in the sink again, and he snapped back that I was being controlling, and we both ended up in our separate rooms, angry and hurt. I'd lain in bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering our ground rule about communication, so I'd gotten up and knocked on his door. Can we talk? We'd worked it out, both apologizing, both acknowledging that living together meant we'd see each other at our worst sometimes. But we'd gotten through it and our relationship felt stronger for it. This is the part they don't tell you about, Jake had said, holding me on the couch afterward. That relationships are work, that even when you're crazy about someone you still have to put in effort. Yeah, but it's worth it, right? Definitely worth it. 2 months into our relationship, Jake's parents called to say they were coming to visit. They want to see the apartment, Jake told me, looking panicked. They want to meet you. They've known I exist for months, I pointed out. They know I'm your roommate. Yeah, but they don't know you're my boyfriend. He started packing. What do I do? Do I tell them? Do I introduce you as just my roommate? Do I? Jake, I caught his hand, stopping his packing. Take a breath, what do you want to do? He thought about it for a long moment. I want to tell them, I think maybe, I don't know, he groaned. I'm scared, Adrian, my parents are pretty traditional. They've always assumed I'd end up with a woman, get married, have kids. What if they freak out? What if they don't understand? They might not understand right away, I said honestly. Coming out, even when you're not sure exactly what label fits, is scary. But Jake, you're 27, you're an adult with your own life, and if they love you, they'll come around. What if they don't? Then you'll deal with it, and I'll be here whatever happens. He pulled me into a tight hug, his face buried in my neck. I don't deserve you. Shut up, you absolutely do. Yeah. When his parents arrived the following weekend, I was a nervous wreck. Jake had decided to tell them, but he wanted to do it in person, which meant there would be this period where we'd have to act like just roommates while he worked up the courage. His parents were nice. His mom was warm and chatty, his dad more reserved but friendly. They admired the apartment, asked me polite questions about my work, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. Jake's told us so much about you, his mom said over dinner. He's always talking about the things you two do together. It's nice that you're such good friends. I caught Jake's eye across the table, saw him take a deep breath. Actually, Mom, Dad, Adrian's not just my friend, he's my boyfriend. The silence that followed felt endless. His mom's smile froze, his dad's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. They both stared at Jake, then at me, then back at Jake. Your boyfriend, his dad repeated slowly. Yes, Jake's voice was steady, even though I could see his hands shaking under the table. I know this is probably a surprise, it's been a surprise for me too, but I've been figuring some things out about myself and Adrian. He's really important to me, I wanted you to know. His mom found her voice first. But Jake, you dated Rachel for 3 years, you've never mentioned being interested in men before. I didn't know I was, not until I met Adrian. I'm still figuring out what this means about my identity, but I know how I feel about him. His dad set down his fork carefully. And you're living together, how long has this been going on? We've been together for about 2 months, but we've been roommates for almost a year. So you've been lying to us, his mom said, and there was hurt in her voice. No, I just didn't know how to talk about it, I was still figuring it out myself. The conversation went on for another hour, full of questions and concerns and awkward silences. Jake's parents weren't outright hostile, but they were clearly struggling to process the information. His mom kept saying things like, "Are you sure? And maybe you just haven't met the right woman yet." His dad was quieter, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Finally, Jake stood up. I love you both, he said firmly. But I need you to understand that this isn't a phase or confusion. This is my life and Adrian is part of it. I'm not asking for your permission, but I am hoping for your acceptance. And if you can't give that right now, then we'll have to work through that. His parents left shortly after, the goodbye strained and uncomfortable. As soon as the door closed behind them, Jake sagged against the wall. Well, that went terribly, he said. Hey, I went to him, wrapping him in my arms. You did it, you told them. That took incredible courage. They hate it, they hate me. They don't hate you, they're surprised and confused, and they're going to need time to adjust. But you planted the seed, now they need to process. We spent the rest of the evening on the couch, Jake's head in my lap while I played with his hair. He was quiet, processing, and I let him be, just offering my presence and support. Do you regret it? I asked eventually, telling them. No, he said immediately. I mean, it sucked and I wish it had gone better, but no, I'm tired of hiding, I'm tired of being scared. If they can't accept this, that's their problem, not mine. I bent down and kissed his forehead. I'm proud of you. Yes. So proud. Jake's parents called 3 days later. I was at work when it happened, so I didn't get the full story until I came home that evening. I found Jake in his room, our room really, since we'd basically been sleeping in the same bed every night, sitting on the edge of the bed with a dazed expression. What happened? I asked, immediately worried. My parents called, we talked for about 2 hours. And they're trying. My mom said she's been doing research, reading articles about sexuality and coming out. My dad said he just wants me to be happy. Jake looked up at me and his eyes were wet. They apologized for how they reacted, said they needed time to process but that they love me and they're going to work on understanding. I sat down next to him, relief flooding through me. That's amazing, Jake. My mom wants to meet you properly, like actually meet you as my boyfriend. She said she was too shocked before to really see you and she wants to try again. I'd like that. He turned to me, taking my hands. This is real, isn't it? This thing between us, it's not just me freaking out or having some quarter-life crisis. It's real, I confirmed. At least it is for me. For me too, he squeezed my hands. I love you, Adrian. I don't know if I'm gay or bi or just Jake who fell for his roommate, but I know I love you, and that's enough for me. My breath caught. We'd said a lot of things to each other over the past couple months, but he hadn't said those words yet. I'd been waiting, trying not to push, knowing he needed to get there on his own. I love you too, I said, my voice rough with emotion. So much. We kissed, soft and sweet and full of promise. So what now? Jake asked when we finally pulled apart. Where do we go from here? Forward, I said simply. We keep figuring this out day by day, we keep being honest with each other, we keep showing up. Forward, he repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. Over the next few months, we settled into our new normal. Jake met my parents, which went surprisingly well. They'd known I was gay forever and they were just happy to see me happy. His parents came for another visit, and while things were still a little awkward, they made a genuine effort to include me and treat me like part of Jake's life. Jake started going to a support group for people exploring their sexuality. He made friends who understood what he was going through, and I could see him growing more confident in himself with each passing week. I think I'm bisexual, he told me one evening, casual and calm. That feels right to me. I can be attracted to different genders and it doesn't change who I am. How does it feel to say that? Good, really good actually, like I finally have words for something I've been feeling. We talked about moving to a bigger apartment, getting a place that would truly be ours rather than just mine with him added in. We talked about the future, not in concrete terms but in possibilities. Maybe we'd stay in the city, maybe we'd move somewhere new, maybe we'd get a dog. The specifics didn't matter as much as the fact that we were planning together, building something. Our friends were universally supportive. Some of Jake's work friends were surprised, but most were just happy for him. My friends welcomed him into the group completely, and I loved watching him bond with the people who'd been part of my life for years. Your friends are great, he told me after a game night at someone's apartment. I feel like I have this whole new community. You do. The queer community is pretty amazing about welcoming people figuring themselves out. I'm lucky I have you to guide me through it. You would have figured it out on your own eventually. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to. There were still hard days. Days when Jake struggled with his identity, when he worried about what people thought, when he missed the simplicity of his old life. Days when we fought over stupid things because we were stressed or tired or just human. Days when living together meant we got on each other's nerves. But the good days far outnumbered the bad. It was August again, almost a year since Jake had first moved in, when I woke up to find him already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching me. Creepy, I mumbled, still half asleep. You drool when you sleep, it's adorable. I wiped at my face, embarrassed. I do not drool. You absolutely do. He leaned down and kissed me. Good morning. Morning, I stretched, then noticed the expression on his face. What? I've been thinking. Dangerous. Shut up, he poked me in the ribs. I've been thinking about everything that's happened this past year, about how much has changed. And I'm happy, like genuinely, deeply happy in a way I don't think I've ever been before. He traced patterns on my chest absently. I know I put you through a lot, all the confusion and the figuring things out and the drama with my parents and everything else, but you stuck with me through all of it. Of course I did. I love you. I love you too, that's what I'm trying to say. I love you and I want to keep building this life with you. I want to move to that bigger apartment. I want to meet your extended family. I want to introduce you to my college friends who don't know yet. I want all of it with you. Yeah. I felt my throat get tight with emotion. I want that too. Good, he kissed me again, longer this time, because you're stuck with me now. I can think of worse fates. We spent the rest of that weekend apartment hunting, imagining what our new space could look like. A place where we'd pick out furniture together, where we'd both be on the lease, where we'd truly build a home as a couple. 2 bedrooms, Jake insisted, so we can each have our own space when we need it. Very mature of you. I'm learning, he grinned at me, plus one of them can be your office. You've been saying you need a proper workspace. And what will you do with the other one? I don't know, music room, guest room, room for when I need to escape your snoring. I do not snore. Keep telling yourself that. We found a place we loved, a sunny 2-bedroom in the same neighborhood with big windows and enough space for both of us to spread out. Moving felt significant in a way our first time living together hadn't. This wasn't just about splitting rent. This was us choosing to build a life together, consciously and deliberately. To new beginnings, Jake said as we clinked beer bottles together in our empty new living room, surrounded by boxes. To us. Looking back on everything that had happened, from that first day when Jake struggled with his mattress to now, sitting in our new apartment, I was overwhelmed by how much had changed. How much we'd both grown, separately and together. Jake had come into himself in ways I never could have predicted. The nervous, questioning guy who'd been scared to hold my hand in public was now confident enough to correct people who assumed he was straight, to talk openly about his identity, to simply exist as himself without apology. And I'd grown too. I'd learned that sometimes the best things come when you're not looking for them. That love doesn't always look the way you expect it to. That taking risks, being vulnerable, putting yourself out there, it's terrifying, but it's also how you find the things that matter most. Hey Adrian, Jake said, pulling me out of my thoughts. Yes. Thank you. For what? For seeing me, for being patient while I figured myself out, for loving me even when I was a confused mess. You were never a mess, you were just human. I moved closer to him, resting my head on his shoulder. And you did the same for me. You made me believe that taking a chance on love was worth the risk. We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the sun set through our new windows, painting everything in gold and orange light. Do you ever think about that night? Jake asked eventually. The night you came into my room after hearing me say your name. Sometimes. Why? I just wonder what would have happened if you hadn't, if you'd just gone to your room and pretended you didn't hear. We probably would have kept dancing around each other for months, I admitted. Maybe forever. Neither of us was brave enough to make the first move. I'm glad you were brave, he said softly. I'm glad one of us was. Me too. 6 months later, we threw a housewarming party in our new apartment. The place was full of people, my friends, Jake's friends, our friends, this beautiful mixing of the different parts of our lives. Jake's parents had even come, his mom bringing a casserole and his dad helping us hang some pictures we'd been putting off. You've got a nice place here, Jake's dad said to me at one point. Takes care of it, takes care of my son. He takes care of me too, I said. It goes both ways. He nodded, something like approval in his eyes. Good, that's how it should be. I found Jake in the kitchen, refreshing drinks and chatting with some of his work friends. When he saw me, his whole face lit up, and I felt that familiar flip in my chest that happened every time he looked at me like that. Having fun? He asked, pulling me close despite the room full of people. The best. You. Yeah, this is nice, having everyone here seeing all these different parts of our lives come together. Very domestic of us. We're basically an old married couple at this point, he joked, then his expression turned more serious. Actually, speaking of that, Jake Morrison, if you're about to propose to me at our housewarming party. I'm not, he laughed. God, no, way too much pressure. When I propose, it's going to be private and romantic and thought out. My heart did a complicated thing at the casual when, not if. I was just going to say that I've been thinking about the future a lot lately, about what I want, what we're building, and I know it's early but I can see it, a whole life with you. Yeah, I said, my voice rough, I can see it too. Good, he kissed me quickly then pulled back with a grin. Now come on, your friend Marcus is here and I should probably go be nice to him. You don't have to do that. I want to, he was good to you even if it didn't work out. And he's the one who told you I might not be as straight as you thought, so I kind of owe him. I watched Jake walk over to where Marcus was standing, saw them shake hands and start talking easily. Marcus caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up and I couldn't help but smile. Later that night, after everyone had left and we were cleaning up together, I found myself thinking about everything that had led to this moment. All the small choices and coincidences that had brought us here. If I hadn't posted that roommate ad, if Jake hadn't responded, if I hadn't helped him with his mattress that first day, if I hadn't heard him say my name that night, if I hadn't been brave enough to walk into his room. So many ifs, so many moments where things could have gone differently. What are you thinking about? Jake asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I stood at the sink. Just about how lucky I am. We're both lucky, he corrected. We found each other. Yeah, we did. And that was the truth of it, really. Not that it was fate or meant to be or any of those romantic cliches. Just that we'd found each other, recognized something worth holding onto, and been brave enough to reach for it. The rest was just details, beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect details that made up a life together. Come on, Jake said, tugging me away from the dishes. We can finish cleaning tomorrow. Right now, I just want to go to bed with my boyfriend in our apartment. Our apartment, I repeated, liking the sound of it. Our life, Jake added. Our future. Exactly. We left the dishes for tomorrow and went to bed together, falling asleep tangled up in each other, safe and loved and home. Looking back now, I can barely remember the person I was before Jake moved in. The careful, guarded version of myself who kept everyone at arm's length because it felt safer than risking getting hurt. Jake had broken through all of that without even trying. He'd made me brave, he'd made me hopeful. He'd shown me that love doesn't always announce itself clearly, sometimes it sneaks up on you disguised as friendship and late-night conversations and someone sleeping with their door open. And sometimes the scariest thing you can do is also the best thing. Walking into Jake's room that night, confessing my feelings, risking everything we'd built, it had terrified me. But it had also given me everything I'd ever wanted. They say you shouldn't fall for your straight roommate. They say it's a cliché, a disaster waiting to happen, a recipe for heartbreak. But sometimes, just sometimes, your straight roommate isn't as straight as either of you thought. And sometimes taking that risk is exactly what both of you needed. Jake wasn't a phase for me and I wasn't a confusion for him. We were just two people who found each other at the right time in the right place and were brave enough to see where it could lead. And where it led was here. To a sunny apartment full of our things, to lazy Sunday mornings and dinner parties with friends, to a love that grew stronger every day, to a future full of possibilities. That night when I saw Jake sleeping with everything out, when I heard him say my name, when I finally admitted how I felt, that was the night my life truly began. Not because I fell in love with my roommate, but because I finally stopped being afraid to reach for what I really wanted. And what I wanted was him. What I wanted was us. What I wanted was this imperfect, beautiful, complicated life we're building together. And I'd choose it 1,000 times over. Every single time. Authors note this story is a work of fiction, but the emotions and experiences it describes, the fear, the hope, the courage it takes to be vulnerable with someone, those are real. To anyone out there figuring out their identity, falling for someone unexpected. or navigating the complicated waters of love, you're not alone, your story matters. And sometimes the scariest leaps lead to the softest landings.